All right, so today we're diving headfirst into the world of Bitcoin. It's this tech everyone's talking about, but figuring out how it works, well, it can feel like trying to, I don't know, decipher a secret code or something.
Right. It can seem pretty daunting at first.
Exactly. But the good news is you don't need to be a coding whiz to get a grasp on it. We're going to be digging into excerpts straight from the source, bitcoin.org.
It's a fantastic resource for wrapping your head around the core concepts.
Totally. So before we get lost in the technical weeds, let's paint a picture, all right? Imagine needing to send money to someone right now. But there's a catch, no banks, no apps, nothing like that.
No middlemen whatsoever.
Exactly. Just you, the person you're sending the money to, and the vast expanse of the internet. Right. So how would you even start to make that happen? How do you guarantee it's secure? And how do you prove that the money was actually sent and received without someone keeping track of everything?
It's the million-dollar question, right?
It really is. And here's the kicker. That's the exact problem Bitcoin aimed to solve.
Exactly.
So right off the bat, Bitcoin.org reassures us that we don't need to be tech geniuses to use this thing.
It's more accessible than people think.
For sure. And they make a great analogy. Email. Think about it. You use it every day. But do you actually understand the ins and outs of how it travels through the digital world?
Most people don't. And they don't need to.
Exactly. You don't need to know the nitty-gritty. You just type in an address, hit send, and boom, message delivered.
It's all about user experience.
Totally. And that's a big part of Bitcoin's design.
Make it user-friendly, even if the technology behind it is complex.
Absolutely. So just like email has addresses, Bitcoin has them too, but with a twist.
Right. Think of them like unique, one-time use addresses specifically for sending and receiving Bitcoin.
So it's like using a burner email,
Yeah.
right? You generate a new one every time for extra security.
You got it. It's all about making digital transactions as straightforward as sending a quick email, even if what's happening behind the scenes is super intricate.
It seems like they've put a lot of thought into making it user-friendly,
You really have.
which is great because I think that's been one of the barriers to entry for a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
But here's where it gets really interesting because this is how Bitcoin achieves that security and autonomy we were talking about. You always hear this term thrown around, blockchain.
It's everywhere.
I know, right? It's like the magic word in the Bitcoin universe. But what does it actually mean?
Okay, so picture a giant digital ledger floating out there in the cloud, accessible to everyone. Every single Bitcoin transaction ever made is recorded on this ledger. The date, the amount, everything.
Wait, so you're saying everyone has a copy of this ledger?
Precisely. And that shared access, that transparency, is what makes it so revolutionary.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. So it's like a public record of every Bitcoin's journey?
Exactly. It's called the blockchain.
That is wild when you think about it. But it also brings up a pretty big question. If there's no central bank or authority controlling this ledger, how can we be sure it's accurate? How do we know someone can't just, change the numbers?
And that right there is the real genius of Bitcoin.
Okay, I'm listening.
It all comes down to this really cool combination of cryptography, which is essentially using clever codes and algorithms with a decentralized network. And that's where things get really, really interesting.
Okay, so last we left off, we were talking about this shared ledger, this blockchain, and how it manages to stay secure and trustworthy without a central authority calling the shots.
Right, because with Bitcoin, it's not about trusting some institution. It's about trusting the math, the cryptography.
Cryptography, there's that word again. It's like the secret sauce of Bitcoin.
It really is. It's all about using these mathematical techniques to secure information and guarantee its authenticity.
So kind of like a digital lock and key system.
Exactly. When you set up a Bitcoin wallet, it creates something called a private key, unique to you.
My own personal Bitcoin key, got it.
You got it. That private key gives you control over your Bitcoin. It's like a secret code that proves you're the rightful owner.
So it's like the key to my digital Bitcoin vault.
Precisely. And here's the really cool part. Every time you make a transaction, you use this private key to create what's called a digital signature.
Okay, so it's like signing a check.
Kind of,
Yeah.
but way more secure. It verifies that the transaction came from you and no one else.
And because we're talking serious cryptography here, no one can forge my signature or mess with the transaction without setting off alarms.
Exactly. The whole network would know something's up. But here's the thing that always gets people. If there's no central bank keeping tabs on everything, who's making sure these digital signatures are legit? Who's making sure all the numbers add up?
Right, that's what I'm wondering. It can't just be a free-for-all. Right.
Well, that's where mining comes in.
Mining. Like digging for gold, what does that have to do with Bitcoin?
I know, it's a weird term, right? But it's a vital part of the whole system.
Hmm.
So Bitcoin relies on this huge, decentralized network of computers all over the world. These computers, run by people like you and me, are constantly verifying transactions and adding them to the blockchain. We call those people miners.
Okay, starting to make a bit more sense now. So these miners are like the record keepers.
Exactly. But here's the catch. To add a new block of transactions to the blockchain, miners have to solve super complex math problems.
Math problems, like what kind of math problem?
Let's just say they make your high school calculus exams look like child's play. The first miner to solve the problem gets to add their block of transactions to the blockchain, and as a reward, they get Bitcoin.
So it's like a giant digital puzzle competition, and the winner gets the prize.
Exactly. It's a race. And this whole competition, this puzzle-solving frenzy, is actually what keeps the entire Bitcoin network humming along smoothly and securely. With so many miners competing, it's virtually impossible for one person or group to control everything.
It's like a self-governing system, all driven by these computers working independently.
Right. And that's the key to decentralization. It's like a digital fortress, built brick by people all over the world, all working together to protect this shared financial system.
That's seriously impressive. So the decentralized nature of this whole mining thing, combined with the security of those cryptographic signatures we talked about, creates this incredibly resilient system. It's like almost unbreakable.
It's designed to be. But honestly, what we've gone over so far are just the basic building blocks of how Bitcoin works. We've barely scratched the surface.
There's always more to learn, right? It seems like with Bitcoin, the deeper you dig, the more fascinating it gets. And speaking of digging deeper, Bitcoin.org actually has this whole section called Going Down the Rabbit Hole.
Oh yeah, that's where the real fun begins. It's an invitation to dive into the nitty-gritty of Bitcoin, the technical details, the economics behind it, even the philosophical side of things.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this rabbit hole. What exactly awaits us down there? Okay, so we've spent this whole time exploring the inner workings of Bitcoin, peeling back the layers of the blockchain, those cryptographic signatures, the whole mining thing. But as cool as all that is, it really makes you think, what does it all actually mean?
Right. Understanding the how is just the first step. The real excitement comes when you start to grasp the why. Like, what could this technology mean for the future of, well, everything?
Totally. We're not just talking about a new piece of tech here. This feels way bigger, like a fundamental shift in how we view money, value, maybe even the systems that run our world.
You're hitting on something really important there. What makes Bitcoin so disruptive is it challenges all these assumptions we've made about finance, these rules we've been playing by for centuries.
It's like Bitcoin came along and said, hold on a minute, what if we completely rewrote the rule book?
Exactly. We've always relied on those central authorities, governments, banks, the usual suspects to manage everything. But Bitcoin says, hey, what if we took them out of the equation?
And instead of relying on institutions, it's all about trusting math, those distributed networks, the technology itself, right?
Precisely. And that's what's got everyone talking. Because this isn't just some abstract idea, it's already happening. People are using it, investing in it, building on it, and it's sparked this whole debate. What could a decentralized system like this actually look like?
It feels almost utopian, this idea of financial power being more evenly spread out, transactions happening directly between people, the whole system governed by these transparent rules that apply to everyone. No more shadowy figures pulling the strings.
Right. Of course, we have to be realistic, too. And that's what that Going Down the Rabbit Hole section on Bitcoin.org encourages to really grapple with those potential benefits, but also to think about the challenges. Like, how do you regulate something like this? What about security risks? What about the environmental impact of all that mining?
Yeah, it's not a magic bullet, that's for sure. It feels like we're standing at this crossroads. We see the potential, but there's so much we still don't know. Like, how will Bitcoin evolve? What impact will it have on the world?
And that's the most exciting part. We're not just spectators here. We get to be part of this grand experiment.
And that's what's so cool about this deep dive. We're giving you the knowledge to go out there, ask your own questions, form your own opinions about Bitcoin and its place in, well, everything.
It's about empowering people to understand this technology because, who knows, it might just reshape the future.
It really might. So as you continue exploring this rabbit hole, here's something to ponder. We've talked about decentralization in finance, but what about other areas? How could this idea, this shift in power, change other industries, systems, maybe even how we govern ourselves? That's something worth thinking about. And on that note, we're wrapping up our deep dive into Bitcoin. It's been a wild ride. But remember, the journey of discovery doesn't stop here. Keep asking those questions, keep your minds open, and join us again as we explore even more fascinating ideas shaping the world around us. Until then, take care and keep on learning.